Speaking of which, I just got the author's copies of this. This is the Mystery of Dreams. You might have seen it mentioned. And if you look at it, this thing is a beast. That's 400 pages. I can't believe.
Oh, wow.
That took me like a month and a half to edit through, and I'm like, that's a big book. I mean, here's compared to the other one. So 400 pages and 200 pages. You can kind of see the difference there. It's a big deal. I got two books. I'm going to try and do a little commercial at the beginning. Greetings, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Dreamscapes. Today we have our friend Stan from Southern Utah. Hello, Stan.
Howdy. How are you doing?
Good. First I just want to say thanks to Stan for putting up with all the technical difficulties at the beginning. We tried to do it on Discord and we just couldn't get it working. We're over on Zoom, and that's a good thing to tell folks too, is that I can meet you where you're at. I'll as long as you're willing to hang in there and let me muddle my way through poorly configuring my technology. So other than that, I'm pretty flexible. I'll talk to anyone, and I'll talk to you on your preferred format. I haven't tried Facebook yet, though. I don't know what that's like, but we'll figure it out. So without me rambling anymore, I'm going to throw it over to Stan. He's going to tell us about his dream, and then we're going to try and figure it out. So I'm ready when you are. Tell me what you got.
Okay. Well, thank you. So I'll start off by saying that I've certainly had a lot of interesting and strange dreams throughout my life, and I've even had many recurring dreams. But the reason I sort of wanted to highlight this one is because something happened in this one that was very peculiar and has never happened in any other dream. I mean, this one stands out beyond any other dream in my life. And when I ran across your channel, I thought, well, let's ask the DreamWizard for another perspective, because I certainly have a few thoughts about it, but I'm interested in maybe your thoughts about it, because I've never had anything like this happen. It was almost like it wasn't a dream. It was so. But anyway, I'll get into it. So for starters, I was in an old house that I used to live in. And it wasn't a fancy house. It was kind of an old rundown house. It was, 70 or 80 years old. And many other people had lived in that house. But this took place in a house that I actually lived in real life. So in my dream, I was in this house, and it was one story, didn't have an upstairs in real life. But in my dream, I noticed a flight of stairs. And it struck me a little funny, because I knew that this house didn't have stairs going up, didn't have a second floor. So I thought I was a little strange. So I decided to go up these stairs. So I went up the stairs, and there was a door at the top, and I opened the door and I went through, and then beyond the door, there was a hallway. And the further along that I went down the hallway, the memory of this place started to come back. Like I'd seen it before. I'd been there before. And so I kept going down the hallway, and it in the beginning, the stairs and the hallway were kind of just as old as the house was. Like the paint had been a little bit dilapidated. There wasn't any carpet. It was just old crackly wood. But the further I went down, the more new it became. So down the hall a little bit, the paint was starting to become more fresh or more new. Eventually I ran across some carpet. It became a lot nicer, if that makes any sense. So, and every step that I took, the memory of this place became stronger and stronger. Like I've been here before. But at this part of the journey, the memory wasn't strong enough to know what was going on. So as I went down the hallway, I noticed a door off to my right, And I instantly knew that I had used to go through this door. It's like, oh, I know this door. So there wasn't any thought of, should I go straight down the hallway or should I go through this door? I knew that this door was where to go. But there was a little keypad on it, and I 10 feet before I got to the door, I could not have told you what the keypad was. But once I actually got right up on it, the memory of what the keypad number was. And so I punched it in and opened the door. And inside that was another hallway. And I went down that hallway and the same thing happened. There was a door off to my right, a keypad on the door. And like I say, before I got to that door, I could not have told you what the combination was to unlock it. But as soon as I looked at it, I instantly knew, oh, I've been here before. I've opened this keypad I don't know how many times. So I punched it in, and this happened maybe a half dozen times. And it was like a little maze, hallway door, hallway door, hallway door. And every step, the memory just started of this place started to flood. Like, how could I have forgotten about this place? It's all making perfect memory now. So when I got to the last door, there was actually a person standing there. And instead of me having to punch the keypad to open it myself, it was like one of those tilers standing at the door, like a tiler, like a guard or something, opened the door and let me in. When I walked into this final room, the end of the maze, the memory of this room just completely overtook me. It wasn't like a recurring dream. It was like a real life memory. Like I have literally in real life been here before. And this is the really strange part about this dream that stands apart from any other, because I've had recurring dreams before, but I knew that it was just a reoccurrence of another dream. This memory was like a memory of real life, unlike a memory of another dream. So that's what really struck me funny, was because I had been here a lot before. So now I'm in this room in the final end of the maze, and what I beheld was just out of this world. It was over the top, ornate. It was just beautiful. The floor, the coffee tables, the chairs were literally made of gold and marble, and it's just the most beautiful design work. It was so incredibly over the top that I've never seen anything that money could even buy something like this. It almost looked like out of this world type of beauty, and incredibly detailed designs and patterns and all kinds of stuff. It was just over the top. And that was coupled with this memory of I've been here many, many times before. So off to the left, along the left wall, there was 7 chairs, but they weren't just chairs. They were thrones. They were like literally a king's throne. And the thing that was strange about these thrones is that there was a lid that came, like if you were to sit in it, there was a big lid, glass lid that would come and encapsulate your body. So you'd literally be sitting inside of a glass enclosure. And this would lift up so you could get out of it, or when you sat down, you could close this lid in front of you. And to an average person off the street that did not have the memory of what this place was, it would appear to them that these were incinerators, like crematories. They were built to light you on fire. And the people that sat in these would literally, once they closed the lid, fire would ignite inside. And like I say, the average person would think that you were being incinerated. But because of my memory of this place, I knew that the person that are sitting in these would not be incinerated. They would not be consumed by the fire. And I I had a lot of memories, but I didn't have memory of everything. I was still trying to piece together a few memories that were missing, even though a lot of memory was there. So a couple of the memories that I was trying to get to come back that seemed a little strange to me was, number one, the place was completely immaculate, but it looked like people hadn't been there in a very long time. And I was curious as to why it was so immaculate, like not a speck of dust anywhere, if it hadn't been used for so long. So I went back out to the door and I asked Tyler, I said, how long has it been since anybody's used this facility? And he says, oh, a long time. And I said, well, how long? And he says, oh, probably a couple of 100 years. I said, so nobody's been in here for a couple of 100 years? And he says, no. I says, well, then, I have a question for you then. What are you doing up here guarding the door if nobody ever comes up here? And he says, well, this place is always guarded. And I go, okay, so why is it so clean? How did it not dilapidate? I mean, doesn't entropy work up here? How come there's no dust anywhere if it hasn't been used in a couple 100 years? And he said, this place is attended to every day. It's always maintained. I'm like, okay. So going back to these thrones, the final point that came to mind, or this memory, was that it was some type of not just the thrones, but the room and everything in the room all worked together like some type of a technology or some type of a machine. But it wasn't like a mechanical machine. It was more of like a energetic machine. And what would happen is that when you couldn't use it alone. It took all 7 people in the chairs working at the same time in order for the machine to work. And so I knew that if I were to go sit in it alone and go about this alone, that it wouldn't work. And I would actually be consumed by the fire. It literally took all 7 members, whoever those were. I don't have any memory of who they were, but I did remember that when I did use them, it took a whole team of people that had to be in there at the same time. And what they were actually doing is there was 2 things that happened inside the throne. And that was that, number one, they, instead of experiencing getting burned by the fire, they experienced undescribable euphoria, like nirvana or ecstasy. But this would only happen if they were there to perform the mission of this machine. If you went in there to just for self-gratification or self-ingratiation, you would be consumed by the fire. But if you were there to perform the mission and you had everybody present, then you would experience the euphoria and you would not get burnt, and the mission would be accomplished. Now, that is the bulk of the dream. There are a few more other details that I don't know that are too relevant, but that's basically the long and the short of it. I was just completely blown away because I had a perfect memory of using this facility. I knew it by like the back of my hand, and I was just like, what? How did I forget about this place? How could I have forgotten? Because it was just a perfect memory. And I've never had that happen in a dream. And I was really curious to hopefully stumble across somebody else that's somewhat versed in dream symbolism. And I would just love to get your thoughts about that so far. And that's kind of, I'll wrap it up at about there. Yeah.
For sure. I appreciate it. Great detail. I love it. Nice chronology to it, kind of step by step through. You can see I took just 1 million notes, and I'm going to take 1 million more. you did mention that there was maybe a couple of things you left out because you're not sure if it's relevant. Did they happen inside what you've already told me, or did they happen after or before?
It happened after, and just to briefly touch on it,
Sure.
It was the basement. There was a basement underneath this room, and in the basement was a bunch of raw ore. There were metals like gold and copper and brass, and there was machines and pipes. It was like whatever that big room in the top that I described was made of. It was being manufactured in this factory below, but the factory wasn't beautiful. I mean, it was, smoke and fire and machines, and it was doing all sorts of weird stuff to produce what was in the upper room. And I don't know how relevant that is, but that was kind of the last thing I experienced in the dream was the basement.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. When we get back there, I do want to know more about that. But so that is what I call the first pass. And then we go into the second pass that I call the deep dive, where we're going to kind of go step by step, try and put you back in the dream, try and put me inside your head, looking out your eyes in the dream, get as much detail as we can. And then we'll finally get around to trying to figure out what the hell does it mean. I wish maybe someday I will be able to just jump straight to that third phase and cut out the deep dive, but I found I'm not able to do it any other way. Like really getting specific is so useful. But maybe it's just a matter of experience. When I've got, what do they call it, 10,000 hours to become a master. So I've got probably another 2,000 videos to go, something like that. and then I'll get there. So we will, as they say, begin at the beginning. You're in an old house, but you recognize it as a place you actually lived. Is it okay to say where that was in real life? I mean, have you lived in Utah your whole life, or did you move there from somewhere else?
That house was in Provo, Utah.
Okay. And about what time of your life did you live there? Was this, 50 years ago, 20 years ago,
Oh, let's see. It was 30 years ago. It was the first house I moved into after I got married. Well, no, the second house. But that's been 25 to 30 years ago.
Is it okay to ask if your wife is still around? Are you still married, or?
No, divorced back in 2012. We were together for 20 years.
Okay, good deal. That's a good long run. I mean, I'm amazed marriages last at all sometimes. Just it's so easy to give them up, and it's so hard to maintain relationships, and people change and people are different. And, I never give anyone a hard time. I'm just like the whole world. I'm just amazed anything works. Everything's always falling apart. It takes constant maintenance and any inattention or lack of effort, and just everything, and entropy consumes everything. So I don't know if it's relevant. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I think you held it right on the head. That's exactly what happens. We both became just different people over time. We both changed our belief systems, our goals in life. We just kind of grew apart to the extent that it just didn't make any sense to keep it going. So
yeah, and in that sense, again, if any of this is too personal, you let me know. Was it kind of a mutual? Do we want to do this anymore? You both agreed, nah, let's not.
Well, I certainly wanted. I think I wanted to keep it together a lot more than she did. I never believed in divorce. I was always regretted the thought of a divorce.
Yeah.
And I fought pretty hard, but there was just no interest. It didn't seem like there was any interest on the other end. So I quit fighting eventually, so I would become, a crazy stalker.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and that's a tough thing too, because you want to put in the necessary effort, but you also want to respect boundaries. And if the other person's, it takes two to tango. The other person's not into it. What are you going to do? You accept it and say, thanks for trying. Nice knowing you. And I guess we'll just go our separate ways. So it happens.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, but I'm kind of the same way too, where I'm like, I don't give up so easy. But I don't want to be. And that's a really tough line too, where you don't want to be blasé about it. You don't want to be, whatever, could care less, because you do care, and you want to try as hard as you can without tipping over into that other realm of, now you're put trying to be keep a captive against their will. It's like you can't go there, and
right. You have to respect their will as well as your own will, and that's what I had to realize.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so just getting that kind of baseline in terms of where, what period of your life this actual house came from, and what was going on there. So in some ways, it was I don't want to put words in your head of like a happier. It was a different time in your life. This wasn't a house you lived in last week, that kind of thing. And
the time was I'd only been married for maybe a year.
Okay.
And so it, novel. I was young. I was like in my 20s, and life was exciting and new and novel. And that was kind of the time era that I lived in that house. Yeah. I was young, didn't know anything, and thought I knew everything.
For sure. Yeah, and it is interesting that it's specifically a memory from, or a dream representation of a home from that period in your life. So that's why I go through this second deep dive portion, is to say, okay, what do we do? What's that object related to? So that's what we've got right there. And initially, it looked like it did back then, which was more lived in, more worn by use, so to speak. It wasn't run down. It wasn't a dump, but people lived there, and things were falling apart as they do. And that was consistent with reality. And it was a one-story house, but in the dream, you suddenly noticed there's stairs. And did the stairs, just to give me an idea of what you were doing in the house, did you walk around much, or were you just like standing in the living room and suddenly you saw stairs? How would you describe that process of discovering the stairs and what you did when you first found yourself in the house?
So, I'm finally catching how this works. And now that you ask the questions, I've got memories coming back that I didn't have before, like this.
There you go.
So one thing that I just remembered due to your question is that when I went back into the house, I realized that I didn't presently live there. I knew that I was visiting a house I used to live in. So I knew that I was visiting an old house. And I was kind of really curious about, let me check the place out. Let me see what happened to the place over the years. And as I was walking through the house, that's when I noticed the stairs. I'm like, that's strange. I don't remember these stairs here. So I decided to venture up them because I just never remembered those stairs being there.
Yeah. Were they stairs coming off the living room? Were they kind of around a corner in a back hallway? How did you find them?
They were like in the middle of the house, and maybe 10 or so feet away from the I think it was the north wall. So they just went up to a door, and and the stairs themselves were about as dilapidated as the house. But like I say, the further along that journey I took, everything got newer and more fresh and new. It's like very more maintained every step I took. The paint was fresher, the carpets were cleaner, the light fixtures were newer, that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. And I don't know if you mentioned that you were having an experience of colors in the dream. Some people do, some people don't.
Well, certainly the most vivid colors was when I got to the end of the maze inside that room. It was just out of this world vivid.
Okay.
It was so vivid that it didn't feel like a dream. Before I got into that room, it felt like a dream. Just the memory of it felt like a dream. It's like, I remember that dream. But inside this room, it didn't feel like a dream. That's what I've never had in a dream ever. It literally felt like a real memory. Like, this is not a dream.
Yeah.
And it was very different. Even right up to the point that I entered the room, it had a dream sense to it, but not inside this room.
And it was somehow passing into that room that the feeling of the experience itself changed from one of whatever it was, whatever that feeling was of not quite reality to this.
Felt real. That's the best way I can describe it. It didn't feel like a dream. It felt real.
Very cool. I don't remember my dream. I know that I do dream. I just don't remember them. Like I wake up in the middle of a dream and I'm like, there was some rocks. No, it was tall rocks. There was a house. No, it wasn't a house. It was a wall. Fucking it's gone that fast. I just can't, not even enough to write down. So part of my motivation for doing this is I love, I'm kind of living vicariously through people who can remember their dreams in a way I wish I could. But I had a point to all that, not remembering dreams. Oh, but I do recall, it resonates with me that what you're saying about the idea of, I do remember the experience you're talking about in dreams where something went from feeling like I was observing something unreal to I'm in something that feels real. That sparked something in my mind. I couldn't tell you where it happened or what the circumstances were, but that sounds really familiar.
So that's happened to you then almost. That
kind of thing sounds real familiar. I wish I could describe it better or tell you, yeah, I had this dream and it happened at this moment, but I know what you're talking about. I know that feeling.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not that it's something I can explain necessarily, but I get what you're saying, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Yeah. And you found the stairs and they're in the same condition as the rest of the house. And you get to like at the top of the stairs kind of end in a wall with a door. Is there a landing up there?
Yeah, there was probably a 3 or 4 foot little landing. And then the door was at the end of that 4 foot landing. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Like something that would be reasonable.
And there was no difficulty in opening the door, or no hesitation either. Just like, bloop, I'm going to see what's in here.
Yeah, I don't remember anything impeding me from going through the door at the top of the stairs.
Yeah, no feeling of, or the feeling you were having at the time was more one of wanting to see, curiosity driving you forward.
Well, feeling at the top of the stairs was, it started to look familiar. It's like, oh, how come I forgot about this place? But not enough memory had come back where I could even tell you what I was going to find at the end of the maze. I couldn't have told you that at the top of the stairs. But the feeling was, this is looking kind of familiar. I remember this now. But it was just starting to come on.
Just a little bit. And the way you described it was that feeling kind of ticked up by notches each time you went through another door.
Exactly. The memory of the place got stronger. Like, oh, I remember this place. How could I forgot? How did I forget about this? And that memory became stronger with every step.
And you went through a couple of doors before there was a keypad, or there was the first door you came to had a keypad?
I think every door besides the very first one, the first door was at the top of the stairs. And I don't remember a keypad on that door. I think I just went through. And then I proceeded down a hallway, and then there was a door to the right. And every single time this happened, I think it happened 6 or 7 times, there was always a door to the right somewhere down the hallway. Even though every hallway kept going, I knew that that's the door I'd go through. I remember going through this door, and there was a keypad on all of those except the very last door. And then I was let in by a Tyler.
Did you have, excuse me, did you have any sense that the code was always different, or any memory of the codes themselves?
I don't have a memory of those codes. I don't remember what they were, and I don't even remember that they were even that significant. Maybe they were, maybe I should have remembered, but I don't recall what they were, and they were, the fact that I did or didn't remember what they were doesn't seem to be of a big imprint of importance.
Sure. Yeah, it seems more important that there's something happening here with movement across time and space and a change happening. I'm starting to get the meta idea of recurring themes.
Meta message with that would be that as soon as I came up on the keypads, I just knew what they were, because the memory came back. It's like, oh, I don't need to remember them until I presented with them, and once I'm there, the memory was there, and I just went through. And so it did leave a huge impression.
Yeah,
like
and probably the specific number wasn't. If you remember the specific number and you remember that it was always the same, that might be important. But the idea of you look around the house, time and space given to that, moving through space in time, and then you discover something, and that takes you to another place where you have to move again down another length of time and space. And even though there was a security feature, then you're able to overcome it, but you didn't know that till you got there. It's like this. There's something about going on a journey, even a journey of a few steps down a hallway, that getting to that destination, the ability to unlock the door to the next step appears to you instantly. There's something going on with that.
Yeah, it's
repeatedly.
Like you have to actually go there, do that, be that, whatever, and then what you need is maybe presented. But if you don't put the effort and go there, you will never know.
Yeah, if you stood at the end of the hallway, I'm going to stand here until I remember the code, because I can see there's a keypad.
Yeah, I never would have remembered.
You never would have remembered it. Yeah, you got to get there. There's something there too. So that happens. You said maybe a dozen times, and there's something I think probably significant to the repetition, and it's specifically not necessarily the repetition of a hallway and a door, but that's how your mind is seeing this. You might have to go through the same process multiple times to finally get to some final destination, whatever that looks like, whatever that means. And this time at that destination, something's different. The door is going to be opened for you by someone else. I don't know if that's significant in terms of, I don't know what it means, but there is, I think that is important too, that it's not you that has to have a memory and punch in the key and open the door yourself. It's being opened for you. Like you've arrived, the journey's over, the struggle, the resistance is past, and now the way is being cleared for you. There's something in there.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. And it lets you into, before we go too much further there, you said everything was getting nicer and nicer and nicer compared to the first door. This last door also much more pretty compared to the rest of the doors, or?
I actually don't remember what that door looked like. I was more kind of surprised at the person standing there. I was more just, the person himself kind of took my attention. So I didn't take the time to analyze the door. I was kind of surprised that, hey, where'd you come from? What are you doing out here?
Yeah.
And that's what stole my attention. So I didn't focus on the door.
Sure. And also interesting, the only other person or living thing in general that appeared in the whole dream is this right at this final door. So there's probably something in that too. Do you remember much about the person? Do they remind you of someone in real life? Were they a certain type of archetype caricature of a person? How were they dressed? How did they speak?
Nothing particularly stood out to me about the person, other than that just anybody was up there when it was so unused for so long. So I don't remember any particulars about the person. Nothing stood out as far as what the person looked like, or if I ever knew the person. There's really nothing that stood out at all, other than, what are you doing up here?
Yeah, just surprised to see another person there at all. Fair enough.
I remembered the place. I knew that it hadn't been used in a very long time. I'm like, what are you doing up here when this place is unused?
Mm-hmm.
That's probably the only thing I remember about the person. But he did seem to indicate that whether he didn't really say whether it was him or someone else that took care of the place, but he said that the place was always guarded, and it was what kept up all the time. So that could have been him. Maybe he takes turns with someone else. I have no idea. I should have asked him, perhaps.
Well, I think maybe if you had thought of it in the dream, it would have been relevant. It may not be too much more. I do a lot of this is funny because of your dream is all about opening doors. I do a lot of rattling doorknobs. I ask, what did the guy look like? You don't remember. Didn't stand out. Not, maybe wasn't a message in that there. More the message was in the presence, in a surprising presence, suddenly at a place that you had a memory had been long unused. But there's another person. Whoa, what are you doing here? So you did go into the room and come back out to talk to him. But before you entered the room, do you remember having any exchange? Was he like, welcome? Or did he say anything? Or did you speak to him before you went into the room?
It seems like there wasn't any words exchanged. It seemed like he just opened the door and I walked through. And I remember thinking that it was kind of funny that somebody was even up there, because I thought I was, like in some unused attic that I used to frequent. And it just surprised me that he was there. So I don't remember a conversation at that point, only when I came back out to question him as to how the place was maintained.
Gotcha. So maybe at that moment, even though it was surprising there was another person there, you were still a little more focused on seeing what's next. What is at this final room?
I wanted to peek inside. That was more important to me than strumming up a conversation at the time. I couldn't wait to see, because I knew that once I got in there, I would remember it, because I had remembered the doors and the hallway. I knew that something big was coming because the memory was building up. So I think the anticipation overtook my thoughtfulness to engage in a conversation at that moment.
Gotcha. Yeah. And that's probably significant too, in terms of what your dream was saying to you about this process. Even though you get to the first person you've seen the entire time, and they're there to open the door for you. It's this sudden change from keypad. You got to operate yourself to someone else opening the door at that final step. Something there. I don't know. It's going to percolate for a little while. And then as the door opened into the room.
I don't recall. I couldn't tell you.
Suddenly the portal was just empty and you could see in the room.
I don't know whether...
Fair enough.
I don't remember whether it opened in or out. I just remember going inside and just being blown away.
Yeah. So I'm imagining the hallways you walked down were typical house-sized hallways. They weren't grand, 20 foot wide by 30 foot tall.
Yeah.
But then you get into this last room. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. The hallways were very typical. I don't know, 4, 5, 6 feet wide. Nothing out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
But inside the room, it was just out of this world. It was money couldn't buy what was inside this room. It was just marble and gold and there's one other thing I forgot to tell you.
Yeah.
In between the thrones, there was furniture, or like a rod or something that connected each throne. And on the, I don't remember what it was. It was like a shelf maybe that connected each throne. And on the shelf, there were like clocks and hourglasses and these little gizmos, but they were built into the shelf. You couldn't pick them up. And what I remembered is that this had to do with how this machine worked. So whatever was happening with the person sitting inside one throne, like the energy or something would travel through the connectors between the thrones, and it would have some kind of an influence on the guy in the next throne. And then his energy or whatever was happening would go through this shelf that would connect his throne to the next throne. So they were all connected.
Yeah, that's another, that's tickling. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's a piece I forgot to mention. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I found. I mean, I wish there was another way, because it makes these videos really long. We go through a 10-minute description and like an hour-long second pass. It is what it is, though, because otherwise we don't get this kind of stuff. And again, this is also part of my process in terms of trying to get a tickle, a sense of repeating themes. And I mentioned it even earlier, I was onto something with the moving through time and space of repeating a process. Now we've got, and you'd even mentioned it too before, kind of mechanical things, but like an energy sharing kind of mechanism in that sense, but also, so they're all connected, which, fantastic. I mean, that makes it even more significant that these things are there and that they need to be operated by people in every chair. It's not like you can just jump in and take the thing over yourself. You can't fly this plane alone, so to speak.
Exactly.
Yeah. And now you've got like a physical representation of connection. There's like actual conduits, channels, some things flowing through from one to the next. So they're not all just connected by common purpose, but physically connected, and dials and bells and whistles and gizmos and clocks specifically. So that's what I was saying with my tickle I was getting earlier of this moving through time and space. And now you've got things connected spatially and representations of literally the iconic representation of time, a clock. Or something that resembles a clock in that sense. Or you may have known just specifically those are clocks. That's exactly what they are. Do you remember anything about the time on them? Were they the same, different, didn't stand out?
I don't remember. It seemed like it wasn't a digital clock. It was one of the regular round clocks with the two hands.
Good old analog, yeah.
Yeah, but just like everything else in the room, it was just over the top. I mean, gold plated and fancy designs. And it was also part of the shelf. You couldn't pick it up. It was built in. So I don't remember what time it was reading, but I just remembered that there was, I can only remember, there was a clock and an hourglass, but I don't remember what the other gizmos were, but there was a good half dozen gizmos between each throne.
Did you get a sense that they were all time related, or they did different things?
Not necessarily. I think I remember the gizmos that were time related because perhaps time was an issue that I was thinking about, but it seemed like the other gizmos had to do with facets of the mechanism that probably weren't time related, but more functional in other ways. So I don't think that they were all time related.
They were just maybe whatever your brain came up with to say, this is a part of the machinery. This is something that makes the connections work.
Yeah. It's like gizmo served a function in how the energy flowed. Maybe one of them worked like a transistor or a capacitor, or maybe to hinder the energy flow or make it go faster, something like that. But some of them that were like the clocks, those dealt with time functions, and it was like the other gizmos dealt with other types of functions, like impedance or the brakes or the gas, that kind of stuff.
Fair enough. Yeah. And I was trying to get the sequence of events right too, in terms of that was the first thing you noticed was, whoa, this room is just a great beauty beyond belief, like high quality materials and very nicely. Go ahead.
Yes, I did not remember this till you asked me that question. So I'm starting to figure out how your game works here. I don't know why I'm liking this. Nice. So what I just remembered is that the carpets, for example, like the carpets you've got in your background, they were carpets like that, but they were, big and beautiful. I mean, they probably cost millions of dollars, and everything was just beautiful. But the thing that I realized was that this beauty and this ornate design the beauty of it was secondary. It was a byproduct. It was actually part of the technology. In other words, the way that this whole room worked, it wasn't just the thrones, it was the whole room that worked as this machine. And all the beautiful designs was the technology that made it work. And as a consequence, it just happened to be beautiful. In other words, it wasn't just vanity. It wasn't just vain, fancy stuff. It was the technology itself. and it just happened to be beautiful, like over the top beautiful.
Gotcha.
And so that's an interesting idea that I just remembered.
Yeah, definitely. And there's, I think there's definitely something in there too. The thought that came to my mind is, like I think you said you write computer code. So functional code also does tend to have a kind of flow and beauty to it too. I don't know if this dream specifically relates to your job, but I think that analogy works of like, if ugly or non-functional code looks ugly, it's just a mess. It doesn't flow right. It doesn't connect. It does. You can't.
Yeah, they call it code.
What's that?
They call it spaghetti code.
Exactly. Yeah. And even as much as a plate of spaghetti is beautiful in its own way, it's not a well-oiled machine. It doesn't. Yep. And there's, but that's not maybe the best analogy. There's other things that came to my mind of like physical things, like an airplane. It was the first thing that came to my mind in terms of something that is, its function defines its form, and that form is itself a thing of beauty because the requirements of physical aerodynamics mean it has to be in a certain shape. And that's kind of what happens with, say, birds or other animals that are well designed by evolution to fulfill to fly very well, to run very fast. They are a thing of beauty because of what they do, because of what their abilities are. Yeah.
There was an overwhelming perfection of feng shui. It's like where the tables were, where the carpets were, where the thrones were. Let the energy flow. I mean, that feng shui was just perfect. And it just consequently was just beautiful.
Yeah.
But the reason that it was, let me put it to you this way, it was ordered and structured to perfection. And it was just an overwhelming sense of, because this is so perfect in its form, like you said, the beauty was just evident. I mean, something that functional couldn't have been ugly. It just couldn't have been.
Absolutely. So in terms of the sequence of events, you step into the room and the first thing that occurred to you was this overwhelming sense of that beauty in functionality. And then your attention was drawn to then you noticed the chairs, or did you kind of take it all in at once? Was there a sequence of events or was it simultaneous?
No, good question. So the first thing I noticed was, I didn't notice the thrones first off. When I first walked into the room, I just noticed the first and greatest contrast was just the memory of the place. Like, I remember this place now. How could I have forgotten? It's like, what? And of course, the first thing in sight was just the marble floors, those fancy carpets. Even the coffee table, the legs on the coffee table were just got these little designs, little geometric designs that were they were luminescent. They were, they just popped out. It's like the whole place was alive. The room, that's how I can explain it. The room was alive. It wasn't a cold, dead world machine type of a technology. It was as though this room was literally alive, like some type of a living thing. The machine was living. The designs in the furniture was alive. Everything was alive. It was just incredible. So that was the first thing I noticed was the coffee tables, the rugs, the marble floors. And then what was secondary was the thrones. And then when I saw the throne, or the 7 thrones, it was, the memory even was stronger. It's like, oh, I remember those thrones. I remember using those thrones. And like I say, if a person that didn't have my memory of this place, an average Joe off the street, were to look in this room, they would literally think that those were incinerators. And they would think that this is psychotic. They'd think, this is the craziest thing. Why would people get in these incinerators in such a fancy room? It wouldn't make any sense. It would seem entirely psychotic to an average person off the street. But because of my memory of it, I knew that was not the case at all.
When you had that experience of suddenly remembering you'd been here before and you had used them before, did you get a sense of who the other participants were? I
don't have any memory of who the other team was. I don't have any memory of who they were.
Fair enough. Yeah, maybe that rattled that doorknob doesn't come open. That's fine. But just the idea that you had been there before, and that looking at it, you have this sudden stepping outside yourself and looking at this situation as a uninformed kind of third party observer in a way, and you had a sudden understanding that other people would look at this like this is not safe. They would be afraid of the thrones. They would be afraid of the fire in the thrones. Yep. Oh, it's going to burn me up. So the sense that it looks crazy from the outside, but you're inside of it. Not only that, you're inside the room, but you're also inside a memory of having been there before, and it's safe. Not only that, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful experience. It's a euphoric experience if you approach it. And that's when you had that realization too, is this, okay, that's what other people would think if they were looking in from the outside, but I'm in it and I know, and I remember. That's when you had that memory of how the machines worked.
Mm-hmm.
And that,
there's one other thing that just came to mind.
Yeah.
Really liking what you have going on here. The other thing that I just remembered was that even at the time I was using them, apparently from what the guy said hundreds of years ago, that even though there had to be all the members present, there was one other thing that had to be done. And that was that you had to prepare yourself in some way. Okay. You had to go through some kind of a physical preparation before you got into one of these thrones, or you would be consumed by the fire. So not only did there have to be all the members present, but every one of them had to prepare themselves in some way. And I knew that I wasn't prepared. At the time I was in here, I knew that if I were to climb in there, I would be consumed by the fire. I knew that I wasn't prepared. Okay. But I knew that you had to be in order for them to work and you not to be consumed. And that I remember.
Nice. So that actually kind of adds a third layer to it. You got to have a team. They have to have the right mindset, the right mission, the right purpose. They have to be there to use the machine properly, and they have to be prepared in some physical way by taking some action before stepping in to do the thing for the right reason together.
Right. Yeah, all three of those have to be in place for this thing to work. Yep.
Fascinating. And otherwise, it would not only would it not function properly, it would actually be physically harmful to the participants. Yep. Doing it for the wrong reason, doing it unprepared, and doing it without sufficient teamwork or enough people to really get it done properly. Yeah, I don't know, but I like that. There's something there. We'll get there. We'll get there. We'll come back around to it. Yeah. And the idea of specifically seven thrones. I don't know why. I don't know if we'll get there too, but I keep underlining the number 7. I'm like, I like that. I don't know what to make of it. It feels important to me. Did anything else happen between all of that observation, sudden memory, external perspective? Did anything else happen before you went back out to talk to the guy? Did you go over to the machines? Did you play with any of the buttons? Did you walk around? Touch anything?
I did walk around and I couldn't. The memory of this place completely consumed. I was just in awe of how could I have forgotten about this place? How on earth could I have forgotten about this place? And I did walk around with that overwhelming question in my mind. How could I have forgotten? How could I have forgotten? And so, I did walk around, just everything I looked at, the memory just flooded back. And I did that for a few minutes before it was during that walking around that I realized, well, I know that this place hasn't been used in a while. How come the glass on the incinerators are crystal? There's not a speck of dust. And who's keeping this place maintained? And why is that guy out there, And so those are the questions that brought me back out to ask the guy.
Okay, so the sequence was you had this the experience of the amazing beauty, that it was related intimately to the form, that there was a way that participants had to interact with this environment very specifically in order for things to be safely done and properly done.
Yes.
And then only then did questions start coming into your mind about, well, what's going on here? Why? Just that idea of, that's when just the all caps questions suddenly start appearing. And you're like, well, there's only one person to ask, and he's outside. And that's when you decide to step back out there.
Yeah, I think you got the sequence correct there. I think that's about the sequence that it happened.
Okay, correct. Good deal. And then when you approached him, do you compared to the beginning, had his demeanor changed? Was it always kind of stoic, or didn't stand out? Did he seem surprised you're talking to him? Did he seem excited to answer your questions, or bothered by it, or like he was just going through the motions? This is my job, it's what I do, I'll answer your questions. What was your sense of interacting with him?
Yeah, so he seemed very accepting of my question. Nothing particularly stood out about his demeanor or his expression. He seemed polite and welcoming to my questions. And nothing really stood out other than, the question and the answer itself.
Yeah, and that's great that you understood that, and there was kind of a sequence to the questions as well. If I've got the right order, and if you told me in the order that they happened, but the first thing was, you had the question occurred from your memory of the place, that you remember you'd been here a long time ago, and you're like, why is it so clean? But that made you want to ask, how long exactly has it been since anyone's been here? That was the first thought.
Correct.
And did he seem to pause and think? Did he have to gather his thoughts, or was it kind of immediate? 200 years.
I think the first thing he said was a long time. And then I re-questioned him and I said, well, how long is a long time? Or something along those lines. I'm like, well, how long? And he says, several hundred years. And I did find it a little strange that he wouldn't be more specific than that, because I think he knew. I think he would know right down to the day. He was, seemed to be the caretaker. So why he didn't want to give me a specific and let it a general, I don't know. But he left it at several hundred years.
Yeah.
Without specific.
Yeah, that kind of struck me too. It's like, I don't know why I wrote down 200 years. You might have said a couple hundred, and I just shorthand wrote down 200. But the idea that he would be intentionally vague, that you even knew he could probably be more specific if he wanted to, but there's something in there with that. I don't want to give it a purpose yet, but it seems like there was a purpose for not being more specific, because you remembered he could have been if you'd wanted to. So we won't say it's malicious or not.
Yeah, and I, good catch. I think I did say a couple of hundred years, and honestly, I don't actually remember whether he said a couple or several. I don't remember. I think he said one or the other, and I don't actually remember if he said a couple hundred or several hundred.
And not to give you a hard time about remembering the exact words, but just that sense that it was more vague than specific.
I like your attention to detail, though. That's good. That's good.
Thank you very much. And then the next thing you'd asked was, why are you here, or what are you doing here? Roughly in that.
Well, I think the next thing I asked him was, well, if nobody's been here for several hundred years, then how does the place stay so clean? There's not even a speck of dust on the glass in there. And he said something along the lines of, well, this place is attended to every day, or it's always maintained, something along those lines. I don't remember verbatim, but he's basically saying, yeah, this place is always maintained.
Yeah. And that, I thought that the basic gist of that's kind of what I, initially you might've said guarded. Did you have the sense that guarded was the right word?
Yeah, he did say that. Does this I think that was the first thing he says, is this place is always guarded. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
And that word struck me too as, you guard things of value, but you only really need to guard things of value if, say, they would be subject to misuse. And that could be people doing it wrong, using the room wrong, keeping other people out, security guard for safety. Don't go past here. This is off limits, but to staff type of thing. But you also guard it from people that say might want to harm it or steal it.
Yeah, maybe rob it.
Yeah, you take something from it. Use it wrong. Use it without permission. Destroy it in some way. Guarding is it's a specific kind of thing. It isn't just maintained. It is maintained and protected.
And protected
in a sense.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's something in there too.
Those ideas.
Yeah. Losing my elbow pad. I wonder if a lot of people wonder what this is. Just a rolled up towel. I just rest my elbow on it because it's a plastic table here. It's just
good idea.
Yeah. What is this? 41 videos. I finally get around to telling people I have a rolled up towel here. That's what it is. I should get one that's a little more fancy. I've got just for the hell of it, got a little fancy mouse pad. I love these. I don't know if you guys can see the little Fox logo. It's IXCC. I'm not getting paid for this. I use this. It's a squishy, soft. It's like 12 by 14 mouse pad. It could be a little cleaner, but I believe it's machine washable. Oh no, I lost something. There you are. Okay. I should stop messing around with my mouse. I'm going to kill the recording on accident. Anyway, if you want a good mouse pad, that's recommended. I love it. It's comfortable.
Well, great. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, machine washable. Anyway. And you asked him, well, if this place hasn't been used for so long, how is it so clean? And he was saying it's always maintained. It's always protected. There's always somebody watching. And then did you ask more questions, or I might have split this one into two on accident? Was that kind of the totality of your conversation?
Yeah, I believe those were the only two questions. I think that was the extent of that conversation. And then after that, I went back in for a few minutes. And then after that is when I went down into the basement.
Did you do anything else that you can recall when you went back in, or you just wanted a second look? What was your...
Yeah, I think I just wanted to revel in being there again. I knew that I couldn't use it at the time. I was just floored at how vivid the memory was.
Yeah.
But for sure I knew I wasn't prepared to use it. And furthermore, it took a whole team and I was alone. So.
Yeah. But you never had any memory of that specific doorman. You never got that sense of recognition.
No.
Looking or interacting with him.
No, I don't remember ever having to go through him when I used it before, That was the first time I'd ever encountered the Tyler.
Yeah, then that could be a change. It does seem something significant in that. It's like when you've got these recurring themes and then not with that guy, something jumps out at me there too. No memory of having had to go past a doorman on a previous visit. No recollection that the door had ever been guarded. So either that, I would say if we take the experience of building intensity of recollection as a constant theme throughout the idea that this guy would be different, it would probably mean there was never a guard before. Now there is.
I think you're right. Because everything else had been had come back in memories. Like I remember this. But you're right.
Yeah, you didn't have that experience.
He was a new guy on the scene.
Yeah.
Good catch.
Thank you very much. And do you remember how you got from the room into the basement? Do you remember traveling there, or was it like a cut scene? Suddenly you're in the basement looking at the guts, the underside of this room.
The memory right now is really vague, and so I couldn't tell you for sure. But it did seem like that there was quite a bit more to the dream that I don't recall.
Okay.
And those parts that I don't recall could have been my traversing into the basement. But apparently that wasn't strong enough to leave an imprint in my memory. So I do remember the basement itself, but I can't quite remember how I got there. It could have been a cut scene, maybe not, but it did seem like there was a more time that was spent that I just don't recall.
Fair enough.
And
Yeah.
that could have been me getting to the basement. I just don't remember.
Yeah. And it might not have been, I don't know. Sometimes our dreams they'll do the sudden jump cut. I'm here. Now I'm over here. And the brain just cuts out that stuff because, like, it doesn't matter how you got there. I want you to see this. And like a movie, now look at this scene. The idea that you remember you had to travel somehow to get there, it feels like you did, probably means that specific leg of the journey didn't have anything relevant. Just your mind needed to tell you, okay, now you're walking. It's like what is it? Those museum people, and we're walking, and the next exhibit, and no one remembers the walk in between exhibits. So that might be a reason it's not very strong in your mind. I don't know, but that would be my assumption.
Yeah, certainly the basement, I think, was more impressionable than me getting to the basement. And that's probably why I remember that and not getting there.
For sure. And the impression you had of the basement is that it was directly underneath the room. Mm-hmm. And you were seeing the pipes, so to speak, the conduits and connections. And what you saw there, I think you said, was all the basic components that would have been used to create the room, but in their raw form, ingots and marble slabs or whatever.
Yep. It was all the components but they were completely unformed. It was like where they were manufactured before they went upstairs.
Yeah. And that struck me too, that you mentioned it's like, this is the factory where the room was made, that kind of idea of the raw materials unprocessed into something functional, because everything has to come from somewhere. And now you're getting actually to see the kind of, I don't want to say nuts and bolts, but raw materials is the word that keeps jangling around in my head.
Literally saw a pile of ore, like there was like a pile of the gold in just raw ore that hadn't been formed, it hadn't been shaped, it hadn't been processed or anything. But I knew that this is where the elements were coming from that went up in the upper room. But another thing that just came to mind was that it wasn't the basement that the room was designed. That this might seem kind of like an oxymoron, and it is an oxymoron the way I understand it. But the design of the room took place in the room. In other words, it was designed up there, but manufactured down here, and then manifest back up in the room. So the scientists or the designers weren't making this machine in the basement. They were only assembling the machine in the basement. Okay. But the actual design work took place in those thrones.
Well, we are basically back at the, I'm going to make a little note of the time here, 1:24 on the nose. Look at that. So now we're kind of getting into the interpretation phase, because we've been back through it as deeply as you can remember and as many questions as I could think of. And this is kind of where I was most intrigued and where I had my first thoughts. I had some other thoughts, but my first real, like, I want to focus on this. There's something of like seeing behind the curtain, seeing how it's made in this section of the dream. I don't know if that idea resonates with you, of like, if you want to understand what's going on in the room. You got to know where it comes from in its unprocessed form, or that connection between everything started off as raw materials, and then you got to turn it into something functional. I don't know if that brings any ideas to mind.
Well, yeah, certainly. The idea that I kind of subscribe to the notion that things are designed, as a thought form to begin with, like upstairs, if that is a correlation.
Yeah.
And then maybe the physical raw materials that you put together that idea might be representative of the basement. So yeah, I'm definitely of the idea that things are created in an abstract form as step one, and definitely the physical part of it is a secondary step. That I resonates with me.
Yeah, and the way you just mentioned it made me think of two things. Number one is that you said upstairs, so to speak, and I'm like, yeah, what if the room was the brain and the basement is the body where the work is done for...
Ooh, that's very good.
Something just jumped into my mind about that.
That's good.
And then my second thought was tangential and just, but I love the idea that every piece of current science fact started off as science fiction. Someone had to imagine it was possible to investigate or build something, and then they go through the trial and error process and they put their theories to the test, and then we get rocket ships. That kind of thing. And the number of people who've had drawn their inspiration for inventions from Gene Roddenberry's original run of Star Trek. I think the communicators, and now we got cell phones. And Bluetooth, literally, that kind of boop, one button, and you're talking to the bridge, everything like that.
Didn't all that have to start off as thought form in the beginning?
For sure. Yeah. You can't build it until you can imagine it. And then you can try and bring it to life, instantiate it physically in the world, get it out of your head and put it on paper, so to speak. Yep. Well, this is go ahead.
No, I just saying I like that addition. I like that commentary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's what I do. My brain just goes a million directions, and then it all falls out my mouth, and hopefully some of it's interesting.
Well, that's exactly why we're here.
For sure. This is usually the part where I pause and I say, before I say too much more or start giving my own ideas, I like to ask people if they had their own moments when a light bulb turned on as they were going through the second pass. Because that's usually where new ideas get connected. They're like, I never thought of that, and I didn't remember that. And then you put them together and you got something. So did anything occur to you before I start filling your head with my own ideas?
Well, I will say that prior to our conversation here today, I have thought about the dream quite a bit. And this dream probably happened maybe 2 months ago, so it was fairly recent. But as you were asking questions earlier throughout this last hour, I did have some memories that came back, like how the phones were connected. So I think that was the point that those memories came back. I don't specifically recall a new memory as of right now, but you did stimulate a few other memories during that talk. Yeah.
Sure. And not just new recollection of images, pre-existing images, but new connections from kind of the descriptions you were giving. Did any, like, some people get those moments where they go, oh, that's what and then you put them together and bam, that's what that means. Something, did you have any of those moments, those kind of epiphany moments? You did or you didn't. It's no pressure, but I like to let people have that first.
Yeah, nothing stands out as of right now.
Okay. No, that's perfectly fine.
I have to be honest though. My real intent by coming here today was to pick your ideas, because I know what my ideas are. I just wanted to see what another dream wizard had to say about this. And, like you say, it's not right or wrong. It's just an idea that came to your mind is what I'm kind of looking for.
Yeah, definitely.
That might you.
Good deal. Well, I appreciate that, and I'm not shy about telling people what I think, right or wrong. That's a thought that I had in my head, so I'll definitely tell you. Okay, so what did I hit upon when I was going through here? There's my first. I say that too often. One of the things I like to do also is, if you look back, say 2 months ago when you had the dream, was there something going on in your life that you think could be connected, like some personal struggle, some difficulty, some problem you were facing or trying to understand? Because a lot of times, dreams are our brain's processing something. We fall asleep and it just keeps processing, and then we start seeing our thoughts about that thing presented in certain imagery. It's not always a one-to-one correlation, but there's a strong possibility that that's a source. So I don't know if anything comes to mind in terms of specific problems you were contemplating or facing or struggling with 2 months ago.
Well, there has been a prevalent issue that I have been trying to process over the last, I'd say, 2 years. And I don't know that it's related to this dream, but now that you mention it, maybe the dream could be related. I'd never made the connection until you just brought it up.
Yeah.
But the issue that I've been struggling with is an experience that I've had maybe a half dozen times since I've moved into this place. I've been here for about 2 years, and during the 2 years I've been here, there's been an experience I've had probably a half dozen times, and it's a sleep paralysis. I'll wake in the middle of the night, and I'll be like 30% awake and 70% in the dream. And every cell in my body will be like a Charlie horse of fear. Physically, it's not a Charlie horse, but emotionally, it's the most evil fear I can. It's like I've been afraid of a lot of things, and I can rationally think about why I'm afraid. Like when I was a little kid and you're going to get spanked, you could rationally think, okay, I did something bad. I'm going to get in trouble. I could reason about my fear. But this fear doesn't seem to have any reason at all. I don't see anything. I don't hear anything, but I'm completely paralyzed. Literally, like physically, I cannot move. It's so bad that I can't even breathe. I'm like, that's how strong the fear is. Every cell in my body feels locked up. It feels like the most evil presence in the entire universe. It is not rational. It is not even what you'd call a typical negative emotion. It was beyond emotion. It was beyond. And so when I tried to think, or when I tried to reason about this, the only thing I'm afraid of is death by fire. Really, I think that's the worst way to go that I can imagine. And like the last time this happened was maybe a week ago. A week ago, this happened to me. Yeah. Where I woke up and I felt like there was just this evil force that was so freaking terrifying that I couldn't even move. And so this is something that I've been trying to figure out where it's coming from, what's happening. And maybe this dream was connected in some way. I don't know.
Could be. Yeah. I mean, that'll depend. I don't want to latch onto that as our only explanation. Of course, it may be, but it depends on whether we're able to kind of connect the dots to some of the specific imagery. As you were explaining that, it didn't
seem to connect.
Not immediately. Like I wasn't going that and that and that. So I'm not saying it isn't. Maybe I just don't see it. But I'm also thinking, that may be the top of your waking mind, like over a long period of time. This thing you're dealing with that's relatively new and just distressing. So that might be the first thing that comes to mind when I think, are you having any problems, or when I ask that. But it may not be the specific problem you were processing that night in your sleep. Just to clarify too, that night when you had this dream, you did not have an episode of sleep paralysis?
No, not at all.
Okay. And it's not every single night. So it's,
no, it's maybe like a couple times a year.
Okay.
Very infrequent.
Fair enough. Yeah. And did you do any research into it? I mean, apparently you're familiar with the term, you know what it is. So you've kind of read about it, you know how it works in general, or the concept of what people experience and what other people have said about the experience.
Yeah, I've poked around on Google. I've typed in sleep paralysis, and just a little bit of feedback that I researched. They basically said it is the most terrifying human experience, period. And I'm like, exactly. I completely agree.
For sure. Yeah.
Terrifying thing I've ever experienced. It wasn't even human. It was beyond human fear. It was just out of this world.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I mean, of course, what you're describing is the classic presentation. You have a sudden awareness that you're not sleeping, but you can't move. So thus sleep paralysis. There's Sigmund Freud's book in 1900, his interpretation of dreams work. The image on the cover, it's got this black looking imp, this kind of devilish looking creature sitting on a woman's chest, and she's in distress, fallen out of the bed, and poking through the curtain in the background is a horse, a nightmare. So this is the iconic dream, sleep paralysis represented in a painting, this malicious force, this heaviness on the chest, the terror, the breathing difficulty, literally pressing on the chest. And it's what we, if I got my facts straight, what we understand about it is that you're becoming consciously aware of your physical surroundings, but you haven't resumed manual breathing, if that makes sense. Like I can choose to inhale and exhale, but when you're asleep, your autonomic, I think that's the word, nervous system takes over and you breathe on autopilot. So you have that experience of being unable to inhale deeply because you're not breathing on your own. Your brainstem is breathing for you, so you're not consciously able to draw a deeper breath. It's like, in some ways, like when your foot falls asleep, you get that pins and needles thing, and you can't operate the muscles. They just won't respond. The nerves are dead. That's kind of that disconnect of what you're experiencing. And it's
Freud was saying this. You got this from Freud or Jung?
Oh, sorry. Well, this is our more recent understanding. They might have known a little bit about that, but I think they knew enough about it at the time that's why Freud put that picture on the cover of his book. Is like, what's one of the most disturbing experiences people can have? This sensation of an evil presence crushing their chest, and they can't breathe, and they're terrified. That was one of the.
I'm not the first one to experience this then.
It's no, it is a well-known phenomenon going back at least, at this point, 150 years or more. I should look into that. Like that should probably be a part of a focus of what I do with this channel, to start get more into the dream research stuff. I'm doing that a little bit with these books. I'm kind of on a journey too, is like, first I need to really educate myself. I've got a lot of ideas. I've got a lot of background and theory, but there's a lot of specifics I don't know. What is the earliest documented case of sleep paralysis? No idea. I should be able to tell people that. It's just, I feel like that's something I should know if I'm going to really be a real dream wizard someday.
Well, yeah, and the only reason I bring it up is due to your question, which was, were you working through any type of an issue? And my life is actually perfect. I have the life. I wouldn't change a thing. I'm stress-free. I'm happy. I have no reason to be in fear. I lack nothing. I want nothing. I couldn't ask for anything different in my life, period.
Yeah.
And why I'm having this fear, I don't even know where it's coming from. I have no reason to be afraid of anything.
Yes.
That's really the only thing I'm trying to work through.
Gotcha. And just to share that, scientific understanding of the phenomenon. I've described it for you. It's a very common experience, and it's very consistent across people. So we would say the cause is not psychological. The cause is biological. So this is a biological disconnect between the, why don't we get up and run around the house when we're having a dream? And some people do. They sleepwalk, and that's a failure of that part of the brain that switches off your thoughts from your physical motor controls. And so that experience of sleep paralysis is more I'm sorry, Cece. It's what's that?
Is it the opposite of sleepwalking?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good way to understand it. It's the same switches is one way to look at it, of rather than your brain being asleep but controlling your body. Now it's your body's asleep but your brain's waking up, and you don't have full control of your body. And it's and the fear is itself a symptom, and it's also a derivative of the process, because you wake up, you can't move, you can't take a deep breath. That's scary just in and of itself. But actually the physical sensation of terror, of fear, is part of it's part of the sleep paralysis itself, if that makes sense. It's not like something you're experiencing because you're paralyzed and you can't move. It's not that logical. It's more like it just happens on its own. It's like that's a feature of sleep paralysis itself, is this overwhelming experience of fear. If that makes sense.
I can definitely reason that if you couldn't move, that would be frightening. Mm-hmm. But the experience felt like the fear was the cause of the paralysis. It did not feel like the paralysis was the cause of the fear. It didn't feel like it felt exactly the opposite.
You put it even better than I could. Yeah, that's exactly right. It isn't. Yeah, you're not afraid because you're paralyzed. The fear is a phenomenon all on its own. How to get that to stop, I'm not qualified to say, or what the treatments are. If it's bothersome enough.
Yeah, you mentioned that it may be biological. I mean, hell, it could have been a pinched nerve or something. Maybe I was sleeping on it. Maybe I was sleeping on my arm and it pinched a nerve. If that's all it is, I'll be very relieved.
Oh yeah, you could probably do. And I mean, the best I can say, since this is a disclaimer, not counseling or therapy, and I'm not making recommendations, not qualified to do that, not a private client scenario here at any rate. But you can definitely Google things you might be able to try, or resources that are out there that decrease the incidence. I think there's some medications that seem to work, if that's something you're interested in. And it all depends on how bothersome it is. I get a sore back and achy feet once in a while. I get some restless legs. It's only bad enough that ibuprofen will take care of it. So I haven't gone any further than that in terms of trying to fix it. So if it's something that you can live with, you don't really care, you can shine it on, or you can look into it a little bit further and even talk to a doctor about it, depending on how bad it is. But it's not going to kill you. You're just going to feel like something's trying to kill you, even if it isn't for a minute, and then you come out of it. Probably the more you experience it, the less mysterious it'll be, and then the less fear of the unknown you'll have, of like, what's going on? It's this again. So it becomes less disturbing over time.
Yeah, it's certainly nothing that's overtaken my life. Yeah. It's just really uncomfortable, like super uncomfortable. And when it's over, I'm just glad it's over, and then my day's fine, my life is fine.
Yeah,
I'm just when it doesn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I wasn't seeing direct connections between this and the dream. Doesn't jump out at me. One thing I did write down was, and what you were saying earlier about having generally a good life. You're in a good place. Things are great. I don't know if you've heard of the theory of self-actualization. Does that sound familiar?
I've heard the term. Yeah, it's a lot of the Eastern mystics and Buddha type stuff.
Yeah. And it's in, I don't know if it was Carl Rogers. That name comes to mind, but I might have the wrong guy. It wasn't Maslow. But anyway, there was a psychologist who was theorizing that once you've gone up, maybe it was Maslow, because there's a hierarchy of needs. And first you need physical safety, and then there's, socialization, and there's feeling useful and connected to people. But you get to the top of this pyramid when you've got nothing else you need physically, emotionally, you've got all these things taken care of. Then we start reaching above the top of the pyramid for what this guy called self-actualization. It's like, now that what am I trying to say? now that I've got my basic needs attended to, what the hell am I doing? What do I want? What now that go ahead.
That resonates because my basic needs are taken care of. I don't really, stress about anything. I just have a perfect life. So maybe I'm looking for something to the next step, perhaps.
Yeah, and that's a good thing and a bad thing about human beings in a way, is that we are problem-solving machines. It's fantastic. You've got a dangerous environment. How do I survive? You've got an engine that doesn't run. You take it apart. You replace the carburetor. You put it back together. This is what we do. The problem is, what do you do when there's no more problems to solve? You go looking for more problems, which is why I think a lot of people, when they say the idle hands are the devil's playground, because if you're not doing something useful or purposeful, you get into trouble. But that's not 100%. That's just a typical pattern that bored teenagers. What do you want to do? Let's go spray paint something or break something. They're looking for excitement, that type of thing. But on the positive side, once we've got all those basic needs met, we start looking for, now I want to create something. Now I want to do something important. Now I want to find a new challenge, rather than problems present themselves and then challenges, we go looking for them. So that was
No, I'm saying that's good. That's good feedback. I like it.
Is that kind of resonating with the theme of this dream, or the feeling you got from this dream in any way?
Well, I'd never thought about that. That might be a component of why the dream occurred, because maybe I am just looking for the next challenge, because I actually I love programming so much that it's not really even a challenge. It just comes easy. I do it every day. Maybe I just need a next challenge. And so that's some good feedback.
Yeah, very, very well could be. That's just one of the things that can, but before I even wrote that down, I also wrote down the term peak experience. And this is another term you may have come across before, because we have a lot of experiences. We've got good ones and bad ones, but then there's like peak experiences. And it's been described as when an athlete is in the zone, they are sinking 3-pointers every time without missing a shot. And it seems like they're, and athletes and other people have described it as, it's like they're not even in control of their own body. They're just experiencing their body doing something to perfection. And that's in that realm of peak experiences. So, and those go hand in hand with self-actualization, because we look for those peak experiences where we're in the zone, we're in the flow, we're being creative, in terms of inventing new ideas, and the ability to implement them. And it's just like magic happens at our fingertips. Those are those peak experiences. So I don't know if putting those two ideas, that self-actualizing and looking for peak experiences and thinking of the room and the function and the beauty of it. And I don't know if something's connecting in your mind. Are you having thoughts about that, or?
Well, yeah, you could actually describe that room could represent being in the flow the way you described it. That might be what I need to achieve next, is how to get in the flow. I mean, I already feel like I'm in the flow to a certain degree, but I don't feel like I'm, like nirvana'd out all day, every day. But if that's what being in the flow is like, then maybe that's what that room represented, is finding what the flow is, rather than just a satisfactory life. Maybe there's a part of life that is really to the next level that you call the flow. So that could be I hadn't thought of that. That's good.
And unfortunately for these peak experiences, they come and go. You peak and you valley, and you peak and you valley, and ideally you don't valley into disaster and screwing your life up. I mean, you've experienced this yourself. You get a kind of, this is how I do. I can meet my basic needs. I can sustain myself. I know how to manage all these problems. But you're looking for more. You're like, I need for entertainment's sake, I need, and for my own curiosity, to challenge myself, to get that feeling of fulfillment. There you go. Sometimes I got Swiss cheese brain. I can't think of the words fall in the holes. And that goes looking for those peak experiences, and they come and go. I mean, nobody can live in the zone 110% of the day. Even athletes, I mean, it comes and goes. They have an off day. But yeah, and those experiences, they feel amazing. They feel beautiful, that perfect function and form together. So that's the impression I was getting of this room and the way you were describing it and you and I have a very similar appreciation of the beauty of function and form, and how just breathtaking it is when something is beautiful because of how well it works. Mm-hmm. And that goes into the idea of orderly, the room being very orderly, and the designs and the patterns and the feng shui, all the things you were describing are this aspiration towards finding, like, you got to go through chaos. Chaos is change to get to new order. But that order is what you're looking for. And of course, once it's the cycle of day and night as the Egyptians understood it. They had, and this is funny because the internet frog, Pepe on 4chan and whatnot. And then they started calling it Kek, the Egyptian god of chaos. And Kek actually has so that's the male half of I don't want to say binary, but a dual god of chaos and order, Kek and Heket. And Heket is the goddess of the dawn and order. So the chaos of night gives way to the dawn of a new order, gives way to the chaos of more change in the night, and the cycle continues. And we do that with our life too. So I had a point there. Sorry. I got off on a tangent. What we do when we're trying to be creative is we're embracing the chaos of night, but the purpose is to get to that dawn of creating a new order. And I think I'm starting to, I was talking with you about the idea of progress over time and repetition. So there's something there in terms of, like, maybe your life has achieved a comfortable routine, and suddenly there's a door that's different. And what's beyond the different doors, not only is different because there's a person there that opens it for you, but what's inside is beautiful, and it's a place you've been before. So that's what brings me back to the idea of peak experiences and self-actualizations. You've probably had these moments in your life in the past where you're in the room doing the thing for the right reason, and oop, I lost you.
Hang on. Let me see.
You tried to adjust something. Hey, you're back. That's okay.
I had an alarm that went off.
What's that?
I had an alarm that went off, so when I turned it off, it switched my screen.
Of course it did. Technology, love it. No, what I was saying is, that would lead into the idea of, once you get back to the room and that mounting sense of recall, I've been here before. We all kind of recognize when we're in the flow, when we're in the zone, when we're having a peak experience, and the desire is to get back there. The desire is I want to have another that was amazing. Everything just worked like magic. And so there's two things there. There's the comfort of routine, the path, and you have to go through it, and there's daily routine, but there's also the idea of a known path to peak experience, or the idea of wanting a known path to get back to the room where the magic happens, and where you feel the euphoria and the connection to other people and to the right purpose. What do you got?
Yeah, what you were trying to bring out of me, I think you just brought out. This was my epiphany then. This is the epiphany that just came to mind. Going back to the fact that when you use these drones, you would experience this euphoria. Here's the epiphany. The fact that the whole machine was to do something on behalf of something else or somebody else, or maybe many other people. It seemed like that was the mission. And the euphoria was the byproduct. But if you went in there only for self-ingratiation, rather than, it's like the difference between service to self and service to others.
Mm-hmm.
If you went for the service to others, then your reward would be the euphoria, the nirvana. But if you went in there only for the nirvana alone, it would consume you.
Nice.
And it works in the same way that the beauty and the form. It's beautiful because it's functional and it works in the same way. If you just are there for the beauty, then it might not be, you might completely bypass the functional benefits that might be there. So yeah, that's an interesting idea.
For sure. Yeah. And there's something important there too. That idea of self-serving versus, it's not self-sacrificing in a way, but it's giving versus looking to take. And that maybe that relates to the idea that there's a guard on this door now. But if you go in and we experience this in real life, the positive self feeling we get from helping someone else, we are giving and we're getting something emotionally satisfying out of it. And it's a good feeling.
Yeah, there's a reward in that.
Yeah. Whereas if you're doing something just for yourself, you can't get that same feeling from taking something from someone or doing something for someone, but really you're just doing it for yourself. There's something different in that of like going through the motions without the genuine intent, or doing something for the wrong reason. And that's like the machine won't work if you go into it with the wrong mindset. And you don't get the same euphoria and that connection to other people too. The idea of, it's like a feedback loop of people working for a common goal. I don't know if you've been in kind of a collaborative projects throughout your life, and do you have any, when you think about that, like, did you participate in something that was a group effort and it had an amazing result and it was of benefit to society, and it was, when you think of a peak experience, did you have an experience like that throughout your life of creating something special?
Well, what's strange for me is that I've always been an introvert, and I've never really I've tried to work on a team. Like way back in the day, I belonged to a programming team, and it was just a horrible deal for me. I like to be alone. I like to work alone. I don't do well I've never done well on teams. I never really thought about that till just now. It could be that this is letting me know that that's something I need to work on, is to figure out how to work in a collaborative setting. And I could get a much greater reward in doing that than just trying to do it by myself. Yeah.
Or at least
that introvert world right now. For sure I am.
Yeah. And I mean, two things with that. Nothing wrong with being an introvert. If I had my way, I would almost never leave this garage. I would live in this little 20 by 30 space and pet my cats and talk to people on the internet. Love talking to you. But when we're done, then I'm going to talk to nobody for like 2 days. That's what I like. I like my alone time. Thank God I married a woman who, she likes to do her own thing. And we're both happy with it. It works for both of us. We're both kind of solitary people, but we don't want to be alone. So we just don't spend any time together. A little bit here and there, but that's it. That works for us. So I said two things, nothing wrong with that. And the other side of it is, okay, so you said you might be having the thoughts of a should. Maybe it's not a should. Maybe it's more of a question of what if. Not as if you're telling yourself, I should be more social. I should get into group efforts, but you're maybe more like, and that's possible, but maybe it's more like you're considering the practical results that you probably could accomplish more as a member of a team, that the synergy output, rather than it's synergy being not 1 + 1 = 2, but 1 + 1 = 3 or 5 or 10, because 2 heads are better than 1. Maybe at that time in your life, you were thinking, could I accomplish more? Could I be of more benefit? Could I get to that self-actualized peak experience feeling of giving to the world if I were able to collaborate better? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think that actually that could actually resonates better with me than the should.
Yeah.
Because I can reason about it, and logically, I can't argue with the notion that if I were in a collaborative environment, the output probably would be more productive and rewarding. That's reasonable to me. I know that by going solo, I can only do so much by myself. I can reason, and I know this.
Mm-hmm.
And even knowing that, I'm still just happy as ever. But logically, if I were to be collaborative, I think you're right. I think the output would be greater. And so I just need to ask myself, well, do I want more production, or want more output, want more of that reward? If I do, then I need to get out of my crab shell and join a team.
Yeah, that's for sure. That might have been something you just fell asleep pondering. What if that particular night, and your mind took over and said, okay, what if? Let's process that. How do I feel about that idea? What does that mean to me? And what am I willing to do to get it? Is this something that is, and if we think we're onto something, the rest of the dream imagery kind of feeds into that in a way. Possibly the fact that it took you back to a time in your life where the world felt like you could do anything and you knew everything, and you were in a new relationship and a new house, and everything was, the potential was great. And so you started there, and that potential took you to secret pathways that looped, but then took you to the room, and a room you were familiar with. And then you saw the kind of dirty underbelly where the oil pan of the machine, kind of where the drippings came out, because nothing's a 100% clean process. And there might be something there too, because working with other people is messy. I mean, it's very orderly and simple. It's on your time frame, in your way, and you can have a tremendous amount of control over all the moving parts, but it doesn't synergistically multiply. So what was I going to say? There's something too there of like, I don't want you to come away from this browbeating yourself of like, man, I wish I was better at this, that, or the other. It's more like you're looking to find a way to work with what you got and get the benefit of that. So what am I trying to say? There's probably a way you could work as a member of a team alone at home. And then you get the best of both worlds. You get this collaborative effort where you're contributing to something bigger than you can produce on your own, but you don't got to go into an office. You don't have to have meetings and do all this other stuff that's like, I don't do any of that well myself. But there's ways to put your heads together. What is it? The decentralized, like the wisdom of the crowd, the kind of cloud computing we do by putting all our heads together. There's probably some kind of a path there, that might satisfy what this dream was pointing you at, a possibility. There's something in there.
I think that this idea of being on a team might have something to do with what I need. I mean, the theme of collaboration and teamwork is resonating as you're talking. So I think that might be, I mean, I know that there was basically 3 different requirements to make this machine work. And I know for sure that the teamwork is definitely lacking for me. For sure it is. So that might be a theme that's resonating.
For sure. And it might be something you're, an unexpressed desire. Like there's, even me being a very solitary person, I like to talk to people once in a while. I do this for fun, for sure. But what was I trying to say? So there's a part of me that wants this, and there's a part of me that's happy when I don't have to do it. It's like on my terms is not the right word for it. It's like a controlled dose in a way of like, it's like a medicine. Like being social is something I cannot live without, but I get too much of it, I overdose, and it's miserable for everybody. I'm a crab, and I get on people's nerves. So there's a just right amount of social interaction that meets my needs and hopefully benefits others. And your brain might have been trying to process it through a similar lens of like, here's something I consider valuable and worthy. This room, this beautiful room of form and function that has great benefit. I know it takes preparation and the right mindset and teamwork to make it happen. And it's not that it's something you're beating yourself up for lacking, but something that you're considering the possibility of what if I did that? What if I reached out a little bit more? I think that's kind of the broad strokes of this dream, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money for that. And I will say that I'm a crab too, so that's probably why we're
right? And probably both of us were going to hang up from this call and be like, yeah, I'm not talking to anyone for a week now. I had enough. Well, now, if that is a satisfactory kind of approximation of something that makes sense for the big picture of the dream, how would you say that compares to what you had initially thought in your own musings? What kind of understanding did you originally come to when you were just thinking about it by yourself?
Well, some of the thoughts that I had by myself were, as far as the physical preparation part of those three requirements, were just things like getting more healthy, maybe fasting a little more often, things like that.
Sure.
But what I've come to kind of realize is that I can only ever see my reality just from my own angle, where I'm at. And so what I kind of appreciate about what you're doing is, hang on.
Oh, we got another alarm and another cat. That's perfect timing.
Yep. What I kind of appreciate about what you're doing is it gives people like me a chance to see me or my dream from another angle. And so the ideas that you brought out, I wouldn't have seen. And that's kind of why I'm here, is to see the angle that you provide that I would never see otherwise. And in that way, I think that the conversation was very productive and enlightening. I don't think I would have really thought too much more about the teamwork aspect had we not had this conversation. That might be what I'm subconsciously reaching for, is to figure that next piece out in my life. I don't know.
Yeah, very well could be.
That's exactly what I think it's about, is seeing what angle you have to offer, what angle someone else has to offer, so I can start forming a more comprehensive picture in my own mind as to what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. Well, if you think we came to a pretty good conclusion, we've been going for a couple hours. I'm happy to stay longer, but I don't want to keep you all day. So do you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, let's wrap it up. I think it was great. I think I thought it was perfect. And I hope you'll have me on at some other point in the future, because I definitely have a few more of those.
Oh, right on. Well, I was going to say, it would be interesting to know if tonight or sometime in the near future you have another dream that seems related, as if like when dreams reoccur, the typical theory is you're still processing the same idea, and the same symbols and images are coming back to remind you this is unresolved. But if you come to an understanding of it, and I've had this experience with some other previous guests, they let me know the reoccurring dream stopped or it changed. And that means something we talked about, who knows what it was relevant and did open a new doorway in their mind about that subject. And the most touching thing for me is when someone is having recurring nightmares and they talk to me about it. And this has happened a couple of times, and they say they stopped. We talked about it. What you said made sense. I was able to process what I was afraid of. I am not having that nightmare anymore. The recurring nightmare I had for 10 years gone. And I'm like, That's in the zone. That's magic. I'm a little, honestly, like I think I might start crying. I was just thinking about it. Like, I can't believe I could have that effect on someone, that just talking to me, nightmares they've had for 10 years stopped. Blown away. Anyway, people don't want to see me cry. I'm going to stop.
Awesome. To help resolve something like that. Excellent.
Yeah. Long story short on that, if something about this changes, you have a new dream, I want to hear about it. Definitely comment on the video, get in touch with me on Discord, however you want to reach out and let me know. And I'd be happy to have you back too. Great conversation. I try to do a few new people in between each time.
Okay.
But, yeah, for sure. So it might be a little bit, but we'll get back around to you. Yeah, I never know how to end these things. So, I will just, once again, thank our friend Stan from Southern Utah. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me. Hope to see you again.
Definitely. And hey, everyone watching, please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. I'd love to do this for a day job. I got a couple of books. I'm going to pull them out one more time just because my first one and my second one, this one's a fatty. Look at that thing. 400 pages, 200 pages. They're not, I priced them as cheap as I could. So people, I'm not making a whole lot of profit out of them. I just want them out there and affordable for everybody. So, look in the comments down below for links and all that good stuff. And that's it for this episode of Dreamscapes. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Benjamin. See ya.